So, welcome everybody to today's Craftalong. I know I've had a couple of people who can't come who booked, which is very sad, but there we go. Everyone's busy, aren't they? So, all got things to do. So, today we're going to make an eclipse card. I've got all my bits here, but perhaps if I show you what I'm talking about, because you may not have heard of it. These do have different names. This one, I like the term eclipse card, I like it. And there are several ways of making these. One uses a single piece of DSP and you cut alternate strips. But then if you tip it, you've sort of got an edge underneath it. So I prefer to use a paper where I can use two sheets, and then no matter which way you turn it, the picture is still all there. So that's what we're going to do today. And what I'm doing is something different to make the strips feel really solid. You can see these aren't bouncing around, moving around. They're really properly stuck on. So this is going to be my main tip for today to how to make them. So let us get on. I am using the gorgeous Scenic Coast paper. I have completely fallen in love with this paper. It's beautiful. And I'm hoping you can see the shine. It's got sort of shiny bits on it. It's not, goldy shine. It's not really, it's a subtle shine, and it's just beautiful. So these lovely sunset pictures have all got shine on them, and there are various different types. There's that one, and they've got obviously patterns on the back as well. That's the second sort, and that's got a lovely thing on the back. I think that's that one. Then there's this one, which I love. Tempted to use this one today, but actually I've chosen different colours, so probably not. I shall use this one in another card I'm going to be making. My favourite colour, so much purple, love it. Then this one with a lovely red and orangey thing on the back. This one, again, just beautiful, blue on the back. And this final one. So lots of different sunsets, lots of different mixes of colours, so you can really play about with which ones you actually want to use and which colours you use as your background pieces. So I've chosen Blueberry Bushel and Balmy Blue for this particular one, to match this sheet here, to match, this is the one I've chosen to use. So those are the bits. What do you need? You need a card base. Now we're making a landscape card. You can make this so it's that way round and opens that way if you wanted. I prefer to make my landscape cards long ways landscape because they stand better. If they're like that, they will stand, but they will tend to slide if they're on a mantelpiece. So I do prefer this way of doing it. So this is a piece of A4 cut in half at 10.5 centimetres. So it's 27.6 by 14.8 and by 10.5, and we're scoring it at 14.8 to make our card base. Then there are two pieces, and I've just realised I've completely forgotten to write down all the measurements of these, so I shall just measure them again to tell you. I did have them 8.5. This is, so it's 8.5 centimetres deep by 14.8 across, and you want two of those. A couple of scraps for the sentiment, and then a piece for the inside, which is 9.5 by 13.8, just for the inside. Because with a dark cardstock, I always find it's better to have something inside that you can then decorate and write on. So these are the sheets I've got, and this is how we are going to do it. So the first thing we're going to do is cut these sheets down so that they fit on here. So we want them the same width, 14.8. So we'll need to trim this down because these are 15 and a bit, 15.2 or 3. And we need to have them 8 centimetres deep. So I want to make sure that I'm getting the sunset in the middle. So what I am going to do is trim it to roughly where I want it above, and I'm cutting both sheets together. It's DSP, so it's perfectly okay to cut two sheets together. You won't damage anything. So I'm just guessing roughly where I want my top to be, and I shall cut that off like that. So I've got those two strips. I'm going to keep them because I can do things with those. And then if I turn these pieces round, I can then measure my 8 centimetres using the cut edge. So I know where my top is, and then I can measure it to my 8 centimetres just there, and then chop off the extra from the bottom. And as I say, I'm keeping those bits because I will use them. So we need to cut the middle down. Now, this is, as I said, 15.2. We only need to cut it down to 14.8. So I just need to take a little bit You could do this from one side. I'm going to take a little tiny bit off two sides, just because I want to keep my sun in the middle. But that's being really fiddly. You don't need to do that if you didn't want to. So measuring at 15.8 and just trim those little bits off each side. It's only a tiny bit you're cutting off. Or you could stick it on your card and then trim it with scissors. It's totally up to you. But that gives us our two pieces that we're now going to stick on these cards. Now, importantly, sometimes when we're sticking layers on, we just stick things around the edge. Put plenty of glue on, because we're going to cut one of these down and we want to make sure it's stuck all over. So when we're putting the glue on, rather than just go around the edge like this, I am going to put it in the middle as well, like that, to make sure that I've got plenty of glue on it. Oops, just put an extra bit in there. And then we can stick that on. Now, it's going to reach from edge to edge. So I just want to make sure that I've got the same gap top and bottom. So I'm just going to eyeball that, make sure it's straight. Not quite, there we go. And just stick that down. So we know that's stuck all over. This second piece that's going to go flat on the card doesn't matter quite so much. You could just put glue all the way around the edge. So I'm not going to be too careful with this. I always put something in the middle, but I don't need to worry too much about this piece. This is the piece I'm going to stick on the card front. So again, making sure I've got my same gap top and bottom. It's not quite right. So again, the reason for using my wiggle room glue, so I can just move it a bit, that's better. Get those pieces in there. So this piece is going to stick on the card front, and I'm going to stick it so that the gap at the top is roughly equivalent to the size of this piece that I've got here. And the reason for that is I want to leave plenty of room at the bottom to fit my sentiment in. I wanted to make the most of this. You could make these panels smaller if you wanted more room for a sentiment, but you know, I just wanted to see all this paper because it's so beautiful. Oh, got glue on my desktop again. So I'm going to just make that gap just nice and tiny at the top. So I'm fitting it near the top of the card, which leaves me my room for my sentiment down the bottom. So let us, oh, I lost the top of that. I'll pick it up in a bit. These pieces I'm going to keep because I can use them to decorate the envelope. I actually use this to put a strip down the side of the envelope. I just cut a little strip, and I also put some across the back, but totally up to you what you want to do for that. And inside, I'm just going to do a little bit of stamping, and I'm also going to use a little strip across the bottom inside. So let's do that next. And I just need to choose which bit I use. I think I will use the bottom piece. Whoops, put those to one side. I'm just going to cut a strip, and it doesn't matter how big, roughly 2 centimeters, something like that. Totally up to you how big a strip you want to use, but I shall use that, which is just over 2 centimeters, or nearly an inch, and I'm going to stick it across here. Now, this is obviously slightly longer than this card because we've cut this down for the inside, so I'll just trim it at the end once I've stuck this on. I don't need to take the glue quite to the end. Stick it on, and that, ooh, goodness knows where that came from. That was a dimensional stuck on my finger. It's ridiculous where you get these things from. And I've lost my scissors. There we go. I'm just cutting that little bit off, and that's for the inside, and we just need to do some stamping on that. So I haven't got my stamps out. I just realised I haven't shown you the set. The set I'm using is the Scenic Coast set. It matches this. This is a suite with the papers and these gems, which we will also be using. These are the Sunset Sparkle gems, and there are dies to go with it, which I'll show you in a minute. So these are the stamps. You've got these lovely scenic stamps, two-step stamping for these, some clouds, some boats, a sun, some water and reflections, and lots of lovely sentiments there. And we have the dies to match. This is the set for the dies. They are beautiful. So you've got this lovely sunset, a sort of net picture, little fences, shells, birds, a lighthouse in a circle, a boat in a circle, clouds. Just gorgeous. These cut out the rock from here. and the clouds cut out the clouds. So we do cut out some of those. And these, you can use these in their circle. I've got some ideas for, I think it's the week after next, where I shall be using these to make some note cards. And then, oh, the next craft along at the end of the month, I must tell you about this now, because 26th of May, something like that, that week, I'm going to be making a really good fun fold card, a new fun fold to me, which is just great fun. So that's in a couple of weeks' time. Do join me for that one. So you can obviously use the elements from these. We can cut out the lighthouse and rocks separately, or the boat separately from there as well. Just lovely and beautiful things. And I'm having such fun playing with them. So I do want some stamps now. I think we will use, what shall I use? I shall use Happy Anniversary, because I might just make this my husband's anniversary card, because it's our anniversary in a couple of weeks' time. So I need a card for him. Actually, I have to do two, because I usually do one for him, one for me to give him and one for him to give me. Yeah, I make my own anniversary cards. What the heck? I like making cards. And I need some sort of nice thing for the centre. What should we say? The adventure continues. How about that? I like that. The adventure continues. We'll have that inside. Set that out as well. So that I will put on the inside of my card, remembering, of course, that it's landscape, so I need to keep it that way around. And I'm using blueberry bushel to match my cardstock. The adventure continues. I might add a few nice little hearts or something eventually when I put that in. It'll be from another set. This doesn't have hearts in. Just wipe that glue up while I'm here. Very squeaky when I rub the glue away, but it works. Right. And I shall also stamp my happy anniversary. Now it's quite a long stamp. I'm hoping, where did I put it? There. I'm hoping it will fit on this little scrap I've got. I think it will. So happy anniversary. Oh, it does. Beautiful. There. That's my stamping done. Because I'm going to use DSP on my envelope rather than stamp, which is unusual for me. I usually stamp on an envelope, but just to show you can do different things. So let us start to put this together. I'm going to stick this inside before I then drop something else on it. Let's get this out of the way. And I could put a little boat on there. He used to be a sailor, he doesn't anymore, but I could put a little boat on there as well. I might. But anyway, that will do for now. Yeah, I think we'll have a little boat there. Yes. Perhaps have a couple of little boats sailing. One there and one sailing right next to it. There we go. There, a couple of little boats sailing. It's just for fun. Getting carried away now. Stop that and get on with the eclipse card, Carol. Right. So this I'm just going to layer on there. I'm going to trim that in a minute. But I want to show you how to cut these. Now, when I made this one, I actually cut an even number of strips. So you can see I've got up, down, up, down, up, down, etc. And I just didn't like that. I'd like it both ends. I want to strip both ends. So I've changed the measurements slightly. So I'm going to give you the measurements for this different card here, which is going to have slightly more strips, which is slightly narrower. Now, the important thing when you're cutting these is that you need to make sure you keep them in order. That is so important. So we're going to start off. The first one I'm going to cut at 1.8. So we're using these tiny little marks. So that's the 2. So 2 little marks under the 2 is 1.8. So I need to line the edge of my piece up against that little mark there. And that isn't the first one I'm going to cut. Okay. So that one I'm going to place there. Make sure they stay in line. Now I'm then going to cut all the rest at 1.6, which is one little mark beyond the slightly bigger one here. That's 1, 2, that's 1.5. So 1.6 is this little one here. And I'm using this right-hand side of my trimmer because it's so much easier to use that and make sure that I'm keeping this really jammed up against the tops. Because the one important thing about this is that you need to have these cuts really straight. So you don't want it moving and being slightly at an angle. So use the top of your trimmer to really jam these pieces up at the top. And then we can cut them all. So we're cutting all of these at 1.6. And the benefit of sticking this DSP sheet to a piece of cardstock means that these are really good, strong, solid pieces. So this last one is 1.6 here. And if we've got that right, it will be 1.7 the other side, and it is. So I'm happy with that. So our end ones are just a fraction bigger than the middle ones, but not enough to worry about, but that measurement works. So here are all my pieces. Now I want to keep the end pieces on my cardstock. So I'm going to take out every other alternate one like this. So I'm just moving them up and keeping these where I want them. So these 4 I could keep to use in another project, or you can just get rid of them. I think they're beautiful. I'll probably keep them and use them in some other project. Just put them over there for now. So I've got my pieces here, and now we're going to stick them on here. And the 2 keys for this card is to stick your DSP on cardstock. A lot of ones you'll see just stick the DSP back on here. It is a bit flimsy. You could just do it with DSP. I personally like the more rigidity you get with putting it on cardstock. So for each of these pieces, I'm going to turn them over and put on a strip, one of our adhesive strips, rather than lots of dimensionals, because again, it keeps it more solid. So that's my first one. Turn it back again. So I'm just going to put a strip on each of these, keeping them in order. So important to keep them in order. Don't get them mixed up. It just becomes a bit of a nightmare. And you can do this with any sort of DSP, of course. It doesn't have to be this sort of pattern of DSP. You can make this with any sort. But I just think it's a lovely effect. And the beauty of it is it's not that deep a card. It's got dimension, obviously, from these strips, but it's not too deep. So it's still going to post normally, which increasingly is a factor when we're sending lots of post. So there's all my strips ready. So one by one, I'm going to stick them on the card. And it doesn't matter which end you start, but I would start with one end. We know this one's easy to line up because it is lined up. Oops. It is lined up in it with the edge of the card. So sorry if my head's slightly in the way there. So we have that lined up right at the edge of the card here. Yeah, easy one to put on. So the next we're going to match the patterns, and this particular pattern is not as easy as some of the others to match up. It doesn't matter. We're just going to match up the pattern. So I'm going to hold it by either end, and that's the other benefit of having this these strips on, because to stick the DSP on the cardstock, because it makes it solid, and I can hold it above the pattern, make sure I'm completely lined up, and then I can press it down again. There. And what I've done is I haven't made these exact. That's just a little bit too far down. See if I can just ease it off again. Oop, before it's stuck down. It has. There we go. And the next one, and we'll just keep going until all the strips are on. This one's easier to line up because it's right in the middle. So I'm just looking at the patterns on the paper and lining it up as evenly as I possibly can. You'll notice I am taking my time about this because I do want the patterns to look right when they're on. It should look the same as the bottom pattern. And the final one we know is right at the end, so that makes that easier. There. So there is my eclipse card. And you can see again, if you tilt it, you can't see an edge. If I'd used a single sheet of DSP to do this, you would see under here, you would actually see the gaps there. So that is spreading them out. So I've got one each end. They're slightly wider strips than this. Totally up to you. You could have lots and lots of narrower strips, or, it doesn't really matter how you cut these. Just make sure you line up the patterns as you do them. So just to finish the card, I'm going to stick this on the front here, on this piece, and then trim it down. So I've used balmy blue for this, just to give a little bit of contrast to there. And for that one other card, I used Highland Heather. Then you'll see I also cut out some out of silver foil. I cut out some of the shells for that one. I think I'm just going to use some gems on this one. So I'm just going to trim the edges of this to give me the same border all the way around. On this one, I stuck it on a slightly longer piece of cardstock and flagged the ends. Again, it's totally up to you how you want to play that one. I'm just going to put some little... I found these old dimensionals and I'm going to use them up. I'm going to put plenty on because I'm not sure how sticky they all are. It's amazing what you can find when you move things. I've had to tidy up and I've found all sorts of things. There we go. I just take these off. So my tips for eclipse cards. You'll see the similar sort of cards. You can do it with our big letter dies. You can cut out letters and build those up. That's a really nice way to do it. That usually you do that and you want to see that gap underneath as if you've raised the letters out from the paper, and those are great fun to have. So I'm just going to get rid of that little bit of cardstock there. That's come off little bits from cutting. Balmy Blue, for some reason, is the worst cardstock to cut with a trimmer. I don't know why, but I always find that I get little ends on when I'm cutting Balmy Blue cardstock, so something to do with it. So that you can see how you need to leave as much room as you can, even for these fairly small sentiments. You need to leave that room. So that's why I suggested that at the top. You could cut these down and have them slightly smaller, but I really wanted to make the most of this gorgeous DSP. And then just to finish it off, I haven't lost them. I'm going to use some of these sunset dimensionals. Decide which ones to use this time. You've come off up there, stick you back up there. You're going to stick. Probably not, doesn't matter. I might use these. These are they're very bright, and I haven't actually used these ones before, so we'll see. We'll have them like that, and then we'll have another one up here, I think. I'm being careful to make sure if I'm sticking any sort of embellishments on these, stick them in the gaps. Don't stick them on top of there because you'd obviously build the depth probably too much. So I think I'll leave it at there. I'm not going to over gem this one because husband won't appreciate it anyway. So there we have my anniversary card for my husband. So I hope you enjoy making these eclipse cards. Do have a play and have some fun making these together because they're just great fun to play with. They really are. So thank you for joining me today. All of the details and the measurements are on the website at craftycarolscards.co.uk, and I hope to see you again soon. Please do join me for the next craft along because the card we're going to make then is just out of this world. So I'm really looking forward to that one. Thanks for joining me today. Bye for now.